The previous basket is under review.
Welcome in to another episode of Weekend Under Review. That is Matthew Winick. I am Brian Rauf, here to break down everything from the past weekend in college basketball. Give a quick look ahead to a pretty stacked week as well. Champions Classic week, good Wednesday doubleheader as well. We'll get to that at the end. Before we dive into the games of the weekend, want to make sure to tell you to subscribe to Basket Under Review. Get access to all of the paywalled content on the website and also the Basket Under Review Discord, which is where you get all of Trilly Donovan's insights and intel. That plus the website, the paywall content website, is well worth the subscription. Then you also get the community of college basketball sickos that are in the Discord. Well worth the $10 a month. Can't recommend it enough. Subscribe to Basket Under Review. Support us, what we are doing here. All right, Friday night, we had a really high-profile game, really fun game, too, between Arizona and UCLA. The Wildcats won 69-65. We had some questions about the style that this game was going to take on, given the difference in tempo they like to play. I think UCLA won that for the most part. We both agreed that was probably not good for UCLA to try and slow the game down, and it ultimately wasn't. Wildcats got the win. What, in your mind, was the biggest factor that allowed Arizona to come back and win this game?
Well, we knew that Jaden Bradley versus Donovan Dent was going to be the matchup here, right? The 2-point guards. But who was going to be the other guard to step up? Because for UCLA, that ended up being nobody. Sky Clark was not good in this game. Trent Perry barely played, and Jamar Brown played 7 minutes, didn't take a shot. Whereas for Arizona, Anthony Delorso off of the bench, second year in the system, 20 points. There's the difference in the game right there. Because the shot volume was pretty even, the threes were pretty even. Arizona got to the line a little bit more, but when you have no secondary guard, helping Donovan Dent out, Dent was very inefficient as a scorer because it was kind of all him on ball. Versus Jaden Bradley has that floor spacer, and Anthony Delorso, who only played 28 of the 40 minutes, but was so effective at spacing the floor in his time. And because Sky Clark was so ineffective, you're allowed to throw Delorso in there because he's not going to be a complete zero defensively if he's not guarding someone who's a major threat on ball. So he was the difference, and that's what ended up giving Arizona this win. They now have a big win against Florida where they played very fast, and a big win against UCLA where they played very slow, and that is a good sign.
That is a great sign for them. And they'll play Yukon this week, because what's another test for this Arizona team? Yeah, Delorso, right? The trade away with him for Arizona is the offense he provides is going to be at a high level. Can it offset some of the defensive shortcomings that he has? And UCLA, as you mentioned, did not have the personnel to really capitalize on that, really on anybody. I'm still going to hold firm on the fact that UCLA has to play fast. Like, part of the reason Donovan Dent was so inefficient in this game, part of it is he doesn't have a lot of help on the perimeter, or did not in this game. But making him play a half-court game, not allowing him to get out in transition, without the luxury of an abundance of shooting, it clogs things up for him. And it makes things more difficult, almost unnecessarily. But this is the way Mick Cronin wants to play. This is the way he's played throughout his coaching tenure going back to Cincinnati. We saw some glimpses of a sped up tempo for UCLA in the exhibition season. Did not carry over. I think they got to get back to that if they're going to be a real factor in the Big Ten title race, which they still can be. Talent is there. And if Xavier Booker is going to actually produce, because that was one of the big questions coming into the season, was what is this guy doing? He's played really well. Turnovers are still an issue. But I think you got to get the most out of Donovan Dent. You paid him. You brought him in to be a superstar. You need to let him be a superstar. I think the system is restricting him more than maybe the personnel around him.
Yeah, well, what if I told you this was the third fastest offensive possession length that Mick Cronin has had at UCLA so far? Obviously, it should be the first fastest, and the fastest he's had is the best team he had. That Tiger Campbell Jaime Jaquez team was 203rd in offensive tempo, and that's the fastest. They're 253rd right now. So listen, it'll boost up a little bit as things go along, and as Eric Daly gets himself reinserted back into the lineup after missing the beginning of the year with injury. They'll be fine. Sky Clark will play better. They'll probably be a little bit faster. I don't think we're getting full unleashed Donovan Dent, though.
No, and he's still learning a new system. He's still finding his way. I don't think the system is doing him any favors, though.
No,
Let's
well,
put it.
listen, we all knew this coming into the season, right? There's going to be a little bit of bend both ways. Right now,
Yep.
maybe Dent is bending a little more than Mikron.
Yep. We'll see how that progresses. Big game on Saturday night. Moving on to who Arizona is going to face this week with UConn, who got the big victory over BYU, 86-84. It looked like a blowout. Give BYU a ton of credit for coming back and making this really interesting at the end. But ultimately, the Huskies get a big win over a top 10 team. And for about 30 minutes, I think looked like the best team in the country. We can talk about the last 10, but I thought the Huskies looked good for the most part, and I thought BYU showed a lot of fight getting back into that in the second half.
I don't actually think UConn looked that good in this game. Coming into this, and all we've talked about all season so far is how BYU has zero bench. And then you hear the morning of the game that Kennard Davis is not going to be available for this due to some off-court problems. And then 8 minutes into the game, Keba Keita gets literally knocked out of the game. And so now a team that has no bench only has 3 starters remaining. Granted, 2 of them are AJ DeBonsa and Richie Saunders. Actually, the third one, Robert Wright, isn't too bad himself. But for UConn, largely at full strength, so missing Braylon Mullins, who hasn't yet to play a college game, but by all accounts, going to be a huge part of this team. Mm-hmm. To let them not only come back, but to not be able to knock them out down 2 key starters is concerning to me. This team is going to be solid because they run amazing set plays in the half court. That's what Dan Hurley's staple is. Alex Karaban, if you don't think Alex Karaban's a top 15 player in the sport, which a lot of people were telling me all offseason, then you just don't understand college basketball because he is truly one of the best players in the game. Terrace Reed was great down low. Silas Demery was awesome, like looking Tristan Newton good, which I don't even think in our wildest dreams we expected. And yet they still couldn't pull away from 3-man BYU. So the question to me is, sure, you'll run great set plays. Sure, you have great pieces. But the true UConn #1 teams that won back-to-back national championship games had elite pull-away ability. And against a team that was not full strength, they just could not pull away. And that's concerning.
Yeah, foul trouble played a role for UConn as well. There were some second minutes in there. Also, I think this was almost good for BYU to get to a spot where they were down 20 and down like options, because it just became AJ DeBansa, go figure it out. And it was like, oh yeah, this works. this works really, really well, surprisingly.
Yeah.
So I think like it's almost like a break glass in case of emergency thing. Just be like, AJ, go figure it out. But that's a damn good backup plan to have. It's just to have him go figure it out. And then everybody's going to have a 6'9" wing who can do everything.
Nobody's going to have that.
No, he had some like post moves with footwork that got him layups. He had the off the dribble threes. Like he was doing AJ DeBansa things that kept BYU in this and allowed them to make that run late. I'm glad you brought up Silas Demery, because the fact he was the one they were going to late to make the shots they needed to keep BYU at bay, I thought bodes incredibly well for UConn moving forward. You mentioned Karaban. Throughout his career, anytime you need a big shot, Alex Karaban's going to hit it 80% of the time. It's what it is. Solo Ball became that guy for a good bit of last year too, where he had a ton of clutch shots last year. So if you have Demery now making clutch shots, you're going to have 3 guys on the court in clutch situations that you're like full confidence in making those. And all of them are experienced. I know Demery hasn't played in like the big time games that UConn's going to play in, but he's got a good bit of power conference experience as well. It took Georgia to the NCAA tournament last year, right? Like having 3 guys of this experience performing this well in late game situations, I think only bodes well for UConn when we get to February, March, and you're going to be in those, one and done, do or die situations every night.
Yeah, but I still go back to the fact in their previous 3 games, very easy ones, New Haven, UMass Lowell, and Columbia. But even the Columbia game that I was watching, they won the second half by 4. They took a big lead. It's not like they were playing their deep bench. Everyone that played in that Columbia game, save for 4 minutes from Alec Millender and 4 minutes from Dwayne Karoma, it was their same group and core that played in that game. And they played Columbia to basically even in the second half, playing their guys. BYU, big lead, same deal. They lost the second half. Of course, Columbia has no AJ DeBonsa. That's back-to-back games against the 2 best teams they've played. No offense to UMass Lowell and New Haven. But that's back-to-back games where they've looked great and have not been able to pull away, which was, I mean, you go back to the Illinois game in the NCAA tournament a couple years back. That was the signature of those great UConn teams, and I haven't seen that yet.
If they leave the door open against Arizona this week, that'll be something that Arizona takes full advantage of.
If they have to get to a huge lead to leave a door open.
That is very true. That is very true. Thought Houston might get a pretty good lead on Auburn, and they led most of the way, but this game was much tighter than I certainly anticipated. I think Auburn showed really well in this game. Still, Houston gets the 73-72 victory. They were the number one team in the country this year. You will take, obviously, a win over top 25 Auburn team. Do you feel better or worse about Houston, though, after this performance?
Can I say both?
Yes.
Is that a cop-out answer?
You can do whatever you want to do, man.
I feel better and worse. Better because the freshmen are better than advertised. Like, holy Kingston Flemings. Unbelievable. I mean, we raved about him last episode, but, like, even better in this one.
Yeah.
22 points, 7 assists. In the biggest stage of his career, basically in a true road game. But they split offensive rebounds with Auburn, and that's not good because as much as Houston has been able to perform admirably with their freshmen, they are still Houston, and they're still going to have large stretches of poor offensive ability where they're not able to move the ball and they're not able to get good looks, and that's always been bailed out by elite offensive rebounding ability. And to split down the middle with Auburn, they're only 43rd, and I say only 43rd in the country in offensive rebounding percentage. But they played Oakland, Towson, and Lehigh before this game, and they didn't absolutely dominate the boards. JoJo Tugler is long, but he's thin. Chris Senac has been their better offensive rebounder. He didn't have any in this game. Tugler couldn't finish around the rim. That's a whole other problem. He's been struggling to try to grow his offensive role, but still an elite defender. If you can't beat every team you play on the offensive glass, then that's where the potential issues for Houston reside.
You saw that down the stretch of this game because, Houston was nursing a lead and Auburn was coming back, and there was no creation. There was no creation from anybody for Houston, right? They were up 3, and Emmanuel Sharp shooting some fadeaway from basically half court, just try and beat the half court or beat the shot clock like that. That's not what Houston needs to be. There's always been the best Houston teams always have at least one guard, right, who takes over. Going all the way back to Rob Gray. You had Jamal Shed last year. LJ Cryer became that guy. Uzan was that guy for a good bit last year as well, who could do it. You go down every Houston team, Marcus Sasser, Quentin Grimes. Like, you had those guys who'd be like, all right, we need a bucket. Let's break the defense down. Houston has those guys. Uzan's back this year. Sharp's got that ability. Kingston Flemings has that ability, has shown that ability routinely. I think there's still a little bit of establishing the pecking order of how this is going to go for them, which is a typical balance when you have 3 such prestigious returners that Houston does with Uzan, Tugler, and Sharp, and then the high quality freshmen they have. There's going to be a bit of a struggle because I do think like Flemings was super aggressive the first 35 minutes offensively, and then took his foot off the gas a little bit, almost like he didn't want to step on the toes of the seniors and the experienced guys. They're going to get over that. I think they're going to get through that. But yeah, it didn't look polished. Now Houston never looks polished, but it didn't look Houston level polished. Now Tugler fouled out, Senac fouled out, so like there were foul issues here too. But it was an interesting offensive voyage for Houston down the stretch of that game.
But that's the thing. Houston doesn't have to look polished so long as they can be gritty. And they weren't gritty in this game. I mean, obviously they had their moments, but to split offensive rebounds and to lose the turnover battle, to have only 7 steals and Auburn only have 8 turnovers all game. Like, they didn't get under their skin. They didn't play over-aggressive defensively. Like, they didn't play Houston basketball. They played good enough basketball. And to beat Auburn at Auburn is extremely impressive. Don't get me wrong, but they're not going to be number 1 overall seed in the country good if they're even on the glass and they're losing turnover battles.
Yeah, I think it bodes well for Houston. We're getting into our rapid fire takeaways here in a second. It bodes well for Houston that you won this game against a pretty good Auburn team that played their best game of the season. I think Auburn did, without playing well.
Yeah.
Like that bodes incredibly well for what you can do for the rest of the season. One last note on Flemings too. The last possession defensively, he's already a Houston guy. He's already a Houston guy. You're up one. He's defending Todd Pettiford, blocks a layup going to the rim, the inbounds, deflects the pass out of bounds. Like totally took Auburn out from what they wanted to do because his defense on Pettiford was that level good. He is already 100% Houston, and I love it. I think by the time we get to February and March, he is going to be the guy on this team that even the experienced trio we just talked about defers to. I think he's going to be the guy. We covered those three. Those are the three big games this weekend, but obviously there were 100 plus other games this weekend. So where else do you want to take us? What else did you see that you want to make sure we mention?
The Big East. There were people that said that with revenue sharing and all of the other power conferences having football, that the Big East was going to capitalize because they have more money of that revenue sharing. That didn't happen. The Big East is bad. The Big East is really bad. Xavier looks like the worst power conference team in the country. Butler won 3 cupcakes and then was lucky to be close against SMU late. Providence doesn't defend. They're behind 100. They're the only team lower than 100 in Ken Palm in defense. Seton Hall can't score.
No.
Let's keep on going. Georgetown. I know that you're a Georgetown guy, but 347th in the country from deep, and Langston Love cannot get healthy. He has 7 different, literally 4 different injuries right now, and they need him. They need him because no one else can shoot at all. DePaul lost at home to Buffalo. Marquette. Maryland has nobody on their roster right now. And Pharrell Payne got hurt halfway through that game. They're playing Colin Metcalf and Alex Alston real minutes, and they still couldn't win that game. That's bad. Creighton got killed by Gonzaga. We talked about that. If Villanova is the 3rd best team in this conference, then you have 2 tournament teams probably, maybe 3. St. John's, we've talked about St. John's, and then UConn. So you go up and down that conference, there's 2, maybe 3 tournament teams right now. And sure, things can change, and some teams will beat other teams in the conference, and all good. There are 2 top 43 teams in the country per Ken Palm, and I think that there might actually be 2 top 43 teams in this conference.
I have a part of the Rauf report that's up on basketballreview.com is about Marquette and Marquette's defense, because that's been something they've been able to hang their hat on throughout Shaka Smart's tenure. And they bet on their player development, bet on their recruiting and the guys that they had. The result has been the worst defense that Shaka Smart has had since he's been there. Now it's been 5 games. There's still time for this to improve. But if one of your selling points is that we're going to have continuity because we're not going to bring in transfers, continuity should mean that you were better defensively than those around you. And it's not been the case right now. Like any chance Marquette has of turning this season around has to come with a defensive improvement. Mm-hmm. It has to.
And then just one more thing quickly. The Big East has 3 high major wins on the year. 1 by UConn. That just happened. And then 2 by Georgetown, Clemson, and Maryland. So just 3. If you take Georgetown and UConn out of the equation, that would be 0.
Yeah. I want to talk about KJ Lewis as well, because I wrote in Rauf report last week that he's kind of the engine that makes Georgetown go, particularly when they don't shoot well. His defensive abilities and just some of the offense we've seen grow for him. He had 17 of his 26 points in the second half against Clemson. Georgetown came back and won that game. Malik Mack was awesome as well. I think KJ Lewis is an all Big East caliber player. I think we're really, really seeing that. You mentioned Georgetown, Clemson and Maryland's been on a tournament team, I don't think. Clemson, maybe. I would put them more on the bubble. But for this Georgetown team to have both of those wins right now signals, I think, where this program has kind of come from. That in order to see the steps forward in year 3 you wanted to see under Ed Cooley, those were games you had to win. And Georgetown has won those. They're not perfect. The shooting does have to get better, but it's not like Ed Cooley teams are typically 40% from 3, right? Even the best Ed Cooley teams are mediocre 3-point shooting teams.
Are they 23% 3-point shooting teams?
No, but there will be some progression back to the mean here. There'll be some progression back to the mean here. But I do want to shout out KJ Lewis because he's been awesome. He's been awesome this season. I think that transfer has worked out well for him and obviously for Georgetown as well. I also wanted to talk about Gonzaga because I find myself really liking this team more and more. Not that I think the ceiling is significantly higher than maybe I thought it was. And this is still probably a second weekend team. I don't know if it's a Final Four team, but I think the roster just fits so well together. And they play 9 guys, and those 9 guys, you can throw any of them out there, and there's not a real drop off. That to me is like your prototypical Gonzaga team. I know the ones from 2020 and 2021, even 2022, the Jalen Suggs, Chet Holmgren kind of era, those teams were special. I don't think this team can be special, but this is a team that can get back to the second weekend and potentially make some noise just because of the veteran experience they have. They're old, and how interchangeable they are and how deep they are without much drop off.
Yeah, they didn't play their A+ game. They didn't. I don't even know if they played a B game against Arizona State. They got the job done, but this is a team, because they're so big and because they're so deep, that a B or a C game beats most teams.
Yeah.
And Arizona State is one of the longer teams in the country, and they shot 39% from 2 in this game, which kind of tells you just about how physical and how big Gonzaga is, which is truly like vintage Mark Few. And if they just get a little more shooting, once Graham Ike is not 4 for 4 from 3 anymore, the offense looks a little bit worse. So
it does.
That's just it's just gonna be the question: do they have shooting?
Yeah, I think the floor is still really high for Gonzaga, and
Yeah,
I think it's higher, much higher than I thought it was, which is really good for the fans up there in Spokane. I also want to shout out St. Louis. My last takeaway: beat Grand Canyon by 14. Never a doubt. They were up 9 like 3 minutes in that game, and it got closer than that once. They just Grand Canyon, I think, is a decent team. You can argue how good you think they are, but they're at least a decent team. And for St. Louis to handle them the way that they did, this St. Louis team is good, man. Like they're one of the favorites in the A10. We talked about this in the preseason. We think they should have been the favorite in the A10. There's a chance this team sniffs the top 25 at some point this year.
Shout out Amari McCautry. Amari McCautry is a baller. Like back-to-back 20-point games. He only had 20 points one time last season, and it was I don't know if it was the NIT. It was their postseason. They had one postseason game. He has 20 points on 10 shots, and it's like, okay, well, maybe he'll be a factor next year. Kalu Anya, who was their starting power forward last year, has to redshirt because Amari McCautry can't get off the floor. He's so good. He's 26 of 31 from 2 this year. That's 84%. And he's a 6'6", undersized 4. He is like Robbie Avila is obviously their best player and their leader, but he's their leading scorer and he's their upside.
They're good, man. Billikens are good. Billikens are good.
A lot of fun.
Let's get to the week ahead, because we mentioned there's a pretty stacked week, very stacked Tuesday, the Champions Classic, and then a very stacked Wednesday. Just a nice little doubleheader on FS1. But we'll start with the first game of the Champions Classic, 6:30 on Tuesday on ESPN. Champions Classic's at Madison Square Garden this year, so a little bit extra buzz there. First game is going to be Michigan State against Kentucky. What's your biggest key for this game?
Both teams so far this year are top 50 in the country in offensive and defensive rebounding rate. If Kentucky actually is the 18th best or the 11th best defensive rebounding team in the country like they are right now, Michigan State has no chance. Because if they don't get second chances, it's kind of like we're talking about with Houston. If they don't get second chances, they're not winning this basketball game. They can't hit a 3 to save their lives. We're talking about teams that can't shoot. Michigan State's top of the list. If Kentucky can actually rebound this well, they've only played one power conference team, and it was Louisville, who is not necessarily a great rebounding team. If they're legit on that defensive glass, they'll run away with this basketball game. But it's going to really test their bigs. Talking about no Jaden Quaintance yet and Amari Williams and how important he was for them last year. Brandon Garrison and Malachi Moreno on the defensive glass against Jackson Kohler and Carson Cooper is this game, because Michigan State has no other way to win. Kentucky can win in multiple ways. They can be a great defensive team like they were in the exhibition game against Purdue, or they can shoot the lights out like they have in stretches this year. But Michigan State only has one way, and that's on the glass.
Yeah, it's on the glass. It's on slowing the pace down, and it's on bringing Kentucky into the muck, because that's all Michigan State is this year. Is can we bring you into the muck and play just a slog of a game? I don't know if they can. I think that'll be interesting to see. If Kentucky loses this game, I think that may what's the proper way to say this? I don't want to say sound alarm bells, but given some of the way Mark Pope is talking about some locker room incidences pre-Louisville and like won't let it go, I think you start to get some of the just maybe eyebrows raised around the Kentucky program if they lose to a far less talented but well coached and good Michigan State team.
So here's my thing with Kentucky. What are they really, really good at? Because I don't know. Like, what is their calling card? We know what Michigan State's is. They're bad at a lot of things, but at least we know what they're really, really good at. I don't know what Kentucky's amazing at. Like, they're third in the country in 2-point percentage, and obviously they get good looks off of cuts. But what are they amazing at?
It should be shooting and offensive efficiency, running that Mark Pope system. But it's hard to do that when you got guys in and out of the lineup. Yeah. Continuity is key there. Nightcap after that game, it's scheduled for 9, but it'll be 30 minutes after the conclusion of Michigan State, Kentucky, is Kansas against Duke. We think Darren Peterson will play. Bill Self thinks Darren Peterson will play. What are you looking forward to in this game?
Yeah, it's going to be a pretty boring game if Darren Peterson does not play. I don't think it'll be particularly close. This has to be the best game of Flory Badunga's career because Duke is a lot stronger in the front court with Pat Gongba and Cameron Boozer. Frankly, there can't be really anyone in the country that's less strong than that duo, maybe Carson Cooper and Jackson Kohler. But that's an extremely strong and powerful duo in the front court. Flory Badunga, more of a leaper, more of a finisher. He's a fine rebounder, but he's not overly physical. He's going to have to be in this game because if you're playing Trey White at large minutes at the 4 spot, then that's going to be a lot of paint touches for Duke. And I don't care if Darren Peterson plays or doesn't play or has 30 points or 10 threes. The paint is a problem if Flory Badunga can't play big minutes and play well in big minutes and not commit a lot of fouls.
100%. I think the counter to that Kansas has to do is beat Duke on the perimeter, make many more threes than Duke does, right? Counter their interior dominance with perimeter dominance. But I don't know if Kansas is like super equipped to do that either. So it'll be interesting to see. There's going to be a lot made of the Darren Peterson Cam Boozer matchup just because of how they are as freshmen. Assuming Peterson does play, I assume Dame Sarr is going to get that assignment and be on him. And that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. That should be the thing that gets hyped more than Peterson Boozer. From a Darren Peterson standpoint, Dame Sarr is, I think, already an NBA level defender on the perimeter. And so you're going to be going up against somebody who's going to be, like, he's going to make an NBA career out of being a defensive stopper. How you perform against him, if you're Dame Sarr, how do you slow down a potential number 1 pick, right? Like, I think that's going to be one of the subplots that probably won't determine the game, but it will be interesting to watch for our player evaluation.
I think the only player that can stop Darren Peterson is himself. Like, he's such a good contested shot maker that I don't really care who's guarding him. In college basketball, I still take Darren Peterson in that matchup, no matter who it is. But Kansas was up by 1 with 14 and a half left against Princeton without Darren Peterson. So he's going to have to play in this game for it to be close.
He 100% is going to have to play for this to be close. Let's get to Wednesday, where Arizona is going on the road to face UConn, 7:00 on FS1. These are 2 of the top 4 teams in the country, I would say. Certainly 2 of the most proven. Arizona, as we mentioned, has the 2 big wins. UConn just got the big one over BYU. Other than just being incredibly excited to watch this game, what should we be watching for?
Well, this will be the first game where Terrace Reed is not the more physical big. Because the duo, actually the trio of Koa Pete, Krivas, and Tobe Awaka are the more physical front court. And how's Terrace Reed going to fare when he's backing into 7'2" and not backing into Mihailo Boskovic, right? That's going to be a huge factor because with UConn's guards, like we talked about, and honestly throw Alex Karaman in there, solid, steady, talented, efficient. But there's a cap there. I'd say even with Silas Demery, who's probably their highest ceiling guard, there's a cap there. And they're going to be able to go blow for blow with Arizona and some of these wings, especially Dwayne Aristote, who's been really, really good, especially from beyond the arc. It's the front court, because if Arizona can win that battle, which I think they probably should, they're really talented as a 3-man group. And they're going to, I thought that BYU would get Terrace Reed in foul trouble. It's probably even more likely that Arizona does that. How does Eric Ribey play? If he has to play big minutes, he did not have to because Terrace Reed didn't get into foul trouble.
Right.
But you'd imagine with Arizona's depth, it's probably more likely here, especially because Keba Keita didn't play in that one. And then Arizona, who just showed that they can win a game in the half court against UCLA, they're going to have to do it again with UConn, who is going to slow this basketball game down.
I don't know if we will learn a ton about either team because of how proven Arizona already has shown themselves to be, and UConn has the BYU win. I trust they're going to be fine no matter what. But this is also, I think, probably the stiffest test for Arizona defensively. Like Florida just could not make a three, and Xavier Lee just kept driving into their front line to get his shot blocked. That was a good defensive effort for Arizona. I don't mean to discount that, but they're not going to make you work as hard as UConn's going to make you work. Right? UCLA, as we talked about, kind of gets in their own way from time to time. UConn's going to make Arizona work. I think if Arizona wins this game on the road, it's going to be because of their defense. And if a Tommy Lloyd team beats a UConn team on the road because of its defense, I will be way too overboard with how good I think Arizona is.
Yeah, this is a good test if they can come out. But keep in mind, like obviously it wasn't a pure home court for UConn and Boston, but like for all intents and purposes it was. And very shorthanded BYU almost did it. So it's not like it's out of the question for Arizona.
Yeah. After that on FS1 it was going to be Alabama against Illinois in Chicago. Another really fun game. Another game where it's probably going to be first to 90, first to 100. Other than just going to be a lot of 3-point shots from Bama. Probably going to be a lot of 3-point shots from Illinois. Other than that, what are you expecting to see?
It's crazy because last year this game had 187 points. And neither team shot more than 33% from three. They didn't shoot well, and this had 187 points. Schematically, both teams play the exact same, like super deep drop coverage where they're like, beat us one-on-one. We don't want you to play team basketball. And that's what makes the game so fast, because when you don't hedge ball screens or double or make anything challenging, just say beat us one-on-one, the possessions are really short. Like you go back and forth, shoot, and both teams want to play in transition, which means the team with the more talented roster, in theory, should win this game. Now, at full strength, I'd say it's probably Illinois, but Illinois is not full strength right now. Right. Illinois has the front court advantage in theory, but the biggest flaw of Alabama and their front court is fouls and physicality. And as good as Illinois' front court is outside of David Mirkovic, they're not overly physical, and they're not getting their free throw line a whole time. So you're kind of bailing out Alabama by letting Aiden Sherrill play a bunch if you can't get him into foul trouble and be overly physical, which if Zvonimir Ivicic is the 5, you're not overly physical. He's not a physical player. So inevitably it'll come down to guards and guard talent. And I'd say Andre Stojakovic is a guard in this instance because he's running ball screens. And there's going to be the most ball screens to possibly exist in this game. Both teams just ball screen. If Kylan Boswell and Andre Stojakovic outplay LeBaron Fallon and Aiden Holloway, then Illinois wins this basketball game, I'd say pretty easily. Yeah. So Alabama's guards had to be on point, in which case they probably have a real shot here.
Yeah, they got to make up for the front court advantage that Illinois projects to have. Right. Let's get to picking these games. Last week, we only deferred on one, which was Arizona, UCLA. No, it was BYU, UConn. I'm sorry. I went UConn, you went BYU, and you almost had it. We're both now 9-7 on the year, right where we should be. Let's go through these 4. We'll start with the Champions Classic, Michigan State, Kentucky. Who you got?
Michigan State. I'm going Michigan State. I'm doing it again.
I'm going to take Kentucky. I will be more than happy to take it.
If the team locker room problems against Tom Izzo, sign me up.
Kansas or Duke?
Duke. I don't even care if Darren Peterson plays.
I'm going Duke as well. Arizona or UConn?
Let's do Arizona. Why not? Let's get wild.
I'll take UConn. I trust them at home.
Oh, you think they're the best team in the country? So
I do. Alabama, Illinois.
It's because personnel is the problem. You go first. I want to hear you here first.
I'm going to take Alabama.
Okay, I'll go Illinois.
Yeah. Against my better judgment, I think it's a coin flip, but I don't trust Illinois yet.
We have a lot of opposition. 3 out of the 4 one of us is going to have a big lead over the other coming into next episode.
There'll at least be a 1 game difference. That's all we need. That's all we need. Just the 1 game difference. But yes, we will be back on Friday to break down these 4 games and all the other action that happens this week. There's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot that we need to touch on, I'm sure. And also preview the games for the next weekend. Another big weekend on tap around college basketball. Matthew Winick, I'm Brian Rauf. Thank you guys very much for listening or watching. If you're on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to YouTube as well. We'll talk to you on Friday.